Hello everyone. Welcome to Friday. You made it all week. God kept you. You've been victorious. Now let's get ready to go ahead and make today the best day we've had all week. Well, hey, this week on Take 5, we have been breaking down the message that I preached for a couple of weeks now, the series entitled The Missing Piece. Not like a piece of a puzzle, P-I-E-C-E, but the missing piece, that supernatural P-E-A-C-E of God that seems to be missing in so many lives. Now, as we wind this thing down today, I want to go to Mark chapter 4. There, Jesus taught the disciples a very valuable lesson about letting God's peace rule in your hearts instead of circumstances, and he did all this through a storm that he went through with them on the Sea of Galilee. I'm going to read some of this to you, and we're going to talk about it as we go. Mark 4, verse 35, on that day when evening came, Jesus said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." Now that promise that Jesus gave them right there should have been enough for them to know they were going to make it. Because he said, let's go to the other side. The thing was, he didn't tell them anything about the journey. He didn't tell them if there was going to be smooth sailing or rough sailing. He said, let's just go to the other side. And for about 99% of life, that's what God tells us. He doesn't tell us about the journey. He just says, let's go. And if God says, let's go, and he puts a destination on when he begins to tell you to go, then he intends to get you there regardless, so we don't have to fear the storms that can come. Leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat just as he was, and the other boats were with him, and a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. Now, this is recorded in 3 different Gospels. Mark said a great windstorm arose. Luke said a great storm came down on them. All this basically means, by both of these guys saying this, was that this thing came suddenly, it came without warning, and it came without reason. And I really believe those are the things that cause us the most detriment in life. It causes us the most anxiety, fear, and anger, and everything else in between. Those things that come all of a sudden, that come without warning, and that come for seemingly no reason at all. And reading this passage should infer upon us that as Christians, we're going to have opposition. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be sorrow and sickness. There's going to be storms. It's just going to happen. Now, some Christians think that they can just confess these things away, but my friend, I want you to understand that's just not scriptural teaching. Every child of God that has ever existed has had to weather storms of life, but we always did it with God right by our side. Now, this storm didn't come to them because there was a lack of faith. This storm came to them to test their faith, to strengthen something in them that Christ knew that they were in need of. Peter talked about it greatly in 1 Peter chapter 1 and chapter 4, saying things like, friends, sometimes these things are necessary, and even saying that we shouldn't think it strange when storms come because it's necessary for our faith to be tested. Testing is needed. That's why the waves beat into the ship. And when Luke said, and Mark said it beat into the ship so that the ship's now full, it was inferring another thing to us, that it's okay to go through the storm and be in the storm. Just don't let the storm get in us like it was getting in that boat. That's when we lose our mind, and that's when we lose our peace. Verse 38 said that Jesus was in the stern, the back of the boat, asleep on a cushion. And they woke him up and said, "Teacher, do you not even care that we are perishing?" Now, I guess they had forgotten that they were in the boat with Jesus. Jesus wasn't going to die in this storm. And if Jesus is in the storm with them, they're not going to die in this storm either. He's with them every step of the way. Isaiah said it this way, when you pass through the waters, I'll be with you. And through the fire, I'll be there with you every step of the way. Mark records the disciples' cries as a question. Matthew wrote, and it sounds like an angry demand. Luke writes, and it sounds like that they're begging for help. If you can imagine 12 different men running back to Jesus, 12 different voices with 12 different perspectives, that's what you get when we face the storms of life. That's why we need the peace of God. These disciples had been on this sea many times, but this storm was different than ever before, and that's what drove them to the place they were in. They were facing something they had never seen before. Matthew 8:26, when we skip there as we wind this thing down, Jesus, after they woke him up, the first thing he said was, "Why is it that you're afraid, O ye of little faith?" And then he calmed the storm. He addressed their faith before he calmed the storm, because their faith is what he was testing. Their faith is what he wanted to build. He didn't want to teach them how to calm the storm, friend. He wanted to teach them how to sleep through it and be at peace in the midst of it, trusting that the same God that said, "Let's go to the other side," is able to get you there. The psalmist tells us he's the God of the storm and says these words, "The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. He's enthroned as king forever. He gives strength to his people, and he blesses his people with peace." Hallelujah to God. Well, friend, I hope you will trust God in every circumstance in your life, regardless of the storms that come your way. Even if you've never seen them or heard of them before, just sit back and rest, relax, and be at peace and trust, knowing that the God that brought you this far will keep you every step of the way. Well, hey, I hope you have a great weekend. I look forward to being in worship service with you this Sunday at 10 o'clock, and I look forward to being with you again right back here on Monday's edition of Take 5. Until then, God bless you. Have a great weekend. Ride out the storm, my friend, and be at peace. He that got you there is able to keep you through. Have a great weekend.